Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Stephanie if you're new here, and today we're talking about everything I read, crafted, or produced in January. We'll start with the books, and man, it is a stack, 11 books. I don't know what got into me, why I was such a voracious reader this month. I guess I wanted to start the year off with a bang, so let's start there. The first book I finished in January was Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. This was technically the December book pick for Goobers Who Read Book Club, which I'll link below, but I didn't end up finishing it until January, so I kept it here with this wrap up. The concept behind the book is behavior science made practical. So the idea is that you start small, celebrate your wins often, and then slowly build momentum. What I really appreciated about this book was that it was grounded in science, particularly in psychology, and had many actionable examples. I think over 300 different habits are listed in the appendix to give you ideas of how to go about this. However, that was also my critique of the book in that I found it very repetitive for myself and the way that I process knowledge, but I would still certainly recommend this book if you're looking to incorporate new habits or even break habits, as he discusses how to do that from both perspectives. So I gave Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg 4 stars. The next book was The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. So this book is the conclusion to the Poppy War trilogy and follows the main character Fang Runin, also known as Rin, as she navigates political upheaval in her society. Since this is the third book, I won't discuss the synopsis anymore in order not to give away spoilers. But the book and the trilogy overall is very heavy. It's based around war. War is horrific. And I don't think that we should shy away from honest realism about what happens during war. But I do believe that some of the descriptions of the atrocities that were committed during the story seemed a bit more for shock value than really added to the development of the story or the understanding of what was happening. I admired what R.F. Kuang was trying to do more than I enjoyed reading about it. It is very intense and unrelenting, but the writing is excellent and it is thematically strong. Like I mentioned, I do enjoy R.F. Kuang's writing style. I've also read Yellowface and Babel by her. Neither of those either was a 5-star read for me, but I do also intend to read Capitalism because I do like her writing, and we'll see if I like that one more. So I gave The Burning God by R.F. Kuang 3.5 stars. Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, which I listened to on audiobook, was my next book for the month. And I do try to listen to all memoirs on audiobook if they are read by the author, because I do think it adds a lot to the telling of the story. So this is Trevor Noah's memoir about growing up in apartheid and post-apartheid South Africa with a white father and a black mother. Interestingly, I don't think I knew this or I hadn't really thought about it. The union of his parents and his resulting birth were technically illegal under apartheid law. So each chapter in this book is a self-contained story about Noah's experiences navigating race, identity, language, and poverty. It also focuses a lot on his relationship with a very fiercely independent mother who I definitely connected to on that level. I found this memoir to be funny, sharp, very human, and a little bit surprising. But I did not rate it because I don't rate memoirs. I don't feel like it's my place to judge someone's story, and I just appreciate that they're sharing their story with me. Next is The Overstory by Richard Powers. This is a novel about trees and people. The narrative follows 9 characters whose lives are seemingly unconnected and gradually converge through their relationship with trees and with nature. I am a big fan of saga-like stories and interconnected timelines, and I thought the first half of this book was wonderful. It had very beautiful writing. This is where all of the characters and their background stories were introduced. It was emotional. But the second half really slowed down a lot for me. I think this is where the book tried to start weaving its plot narrative, but nature terrorism wasn't just something that was very exciting for me, unfortunately. But I did learn a lot about trees and some things about trees in America that I didn't realize. I gave The Overstory by Richard Powers 3.75 stars. Next was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This one I also listened to on audiobook. And if you grew up in the 80s, this book is pure fun. It is a science fiction dystopian novel set in the future United States where most of society is escaping reality via this platform known as Oasis, which is a virtual reality universe. You work, you socialize, you go to school, everything within the Oasis universe. This doesn't actually sound like it's too far in the future, to be honest. The story follows Wade, who's a teenage gamer who's also immersed in this world and becomes involved in the competition that is created by the developer of Oasis, where there is a huge sort of ambiguous prize. It's packed with pop culture references, especially listening to it on audiobook. You can visualize the video games that they reference if you have a recollection of those. It's very fast, high plot, nostalgic. It was really such a good time. So I definitely gave Ready Player One 5 stars just for the sheer enjoyment and nostalgia of it. Next was Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. This is the first book of the Emily Wilde series where we are introduced to Emily Wilde, a meticulous and socially awkward Cambridge professor who specializes in the academic study of fairies, also known as the folk, in the early 20th century. She is determined to complete the world's first comprehensive encyclopedia of fairy lore. So she travels to a remote Nordic village, I think on the coast of Greenland, to document local fairy species and their customs. And this book describes that and her interaction with the town folk that live there. As a disclaimer, I am not a fantasy or a romantasy fan, so I was very skeptical about this book. This is also part of the Goobers Who Read book club, and I was not initially intending to read it, but it came available when I just finished another book, so I decided to take a chance on it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's a little bit of cozy academia meets fantasy. It was definitely the academia vibe that drew me in, and once we got more into the pure fantasy sections, I was a little lost. There are 2 more books in this series. I'm not sure if I'll be reading those. I think I need to do a little bit more research into how fantasy heavy versus academia heavy they are. If you read them and you have any thoughts, please let me know in the comments below. But overall, I did give Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries 3.5 stars. The next book is a reread for me. It is The Clan of the Cave Bear by Jean M. Auel. This is the first in the Earth's Children series, and I read this many years ago and gave 5 stars at that time. And I thought I would read it again just to see if I still thought it was a 5-star read. So this is a prehistoric novel set during the Ice Age. So it follows Ayla, a 5-year-old Cro-Magnon girl who is orphaned from her family by a natural disaster and is ultimately rescued by a group of Neanderthals known as the Clan. Though they take her in, Ayla is different from them physically and culturally. And her presence kind of changes their established traditions as she sort of challenges the norm. As she grows up with the clan, she has to adapt. She has to learn their customs, their language, their spiritual beliefs. So it can be a little slow in its paces. It's really telling about the day-to-day activities of this group of people, establishing their culture, and then how they interact with this new person who's come in. I really felt transported into the daily lives of the Neanderthal community, how they might have communicated, which was not really by language, but more so by gestures, how evolution has progressed around them. There's also some interesting concepts regarding a shared knowledge. One of the main characters is a healer, and the knowledge, since they do not have writing or any other documentation to be passed down, the knowledge of what herbs are available, what can be used for what, is sort of a shared consciousness within this group. And that really was an interesting concept in a community that doesn't use written or spoken language. There are 6 books in this series, and I am currently continuing with book number 2, which is Valley of the Horses, which continues to follow Ayla's journey. And so I did give Cline of the Cave Bear another 5 stars. Next is another nonfiction. This was Capitalism, a Ghost Story by Arundhati Roy. This one I read as part of the Anti-Brain Rot Reading Challenge hosted by Janani of This Story Ain't Over, which I will link below. It's a collection of essays in which Roy examines the impact of capitalism, corporate power, globalization, and economic inequality on contemporary India. I appreciated the perspective and the analysis. It was thought-provoking. I know one of the quotes that has really stayed with me says, 400 people own the wealth of half of the population of the United States. I haven't fact-checked this, but I can certainly imagine that this is true. Again, thought-provoking. I don't know that I would revisit this in any way, but I was glad that I had the opportunity to read it and sort of outside of my comfort zone. So I gave Capitalism, a Ghost Story 3 stars. My lowest rated book of the month was also my first by this author, and that was King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. I heard many great things about S.A. Cosby's books, but honestly, this one was a bit of a letdown. It's a Southern crime novel centered around Roman Carruthers. He's a successful financial professional who returns to his rural Virginia hometown after a family emergency. He's re-entering sort of the orbit of his family's crematorium business with his brother and his sister, and he finds himself pulled back into this complicated local and family dynamics that he thought he'd left behind after moving to the big city. I listened to this one on audiobook, which I think helped, but I found most of the story pretty predictable. I didn't think the characters were well written or had much depth, although, again, I know this is not a story that was supposed to be character-driven. Let me know what you think, and if you think that I would have enjoyed a different title by S.A. Cosby, but I did end up giving King of Ashes 2 stars. Next is the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower, who also wrote The Queen's Gambit, which I did not read but did enjoy the series. This one surprised me in the best way. It's an epistolary novel, meaning it's written through documents, and it's set in late 19th century England. The story is told through the private journals of Emma M. Lyon, who is a very sharp-tongued young woman who has returned to her family home she inherited, only to learn that its inhabitant, which is her cousin, has spent essentially all of her inheritance, and she must figure out an income source before she loses the house that she loves dearly. And an income source is not an easy prospect for a respectable woman in the 1880s. So as the title mentions, this is told through Emma's journal entries, and I really loved the characters in this. The way Emma describes like her day-to-day activities, the events that she goes to, makes it feel very authentic, and it is extremely charming. There's a ton of wit and dry humor. It is right up my alley. There's currently 8 books out, and I believe 20 are planned, but they're very short, only like 125 pages. So I gave volume 1 4.5 stars, and I will definitely continue with the series. And my last book for January was Minnow by Mark Dunn. So this is another epistolary novel. It's set on an island off the South Carolina coast where the inhabitants are obsessed with Nevin Nollop, who was the creator of the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog," which uses all of the letters of the alphabet. On the island, there is a statue to honor Mr. Nollop and his sentence. But as the letters in this sentence start to fall from the monument, the government bans the use of those letters in writing. And so the story is told through letters of people in the community, gradually eliminating those banned characters. It started off strong. As more of the letters disappeared, more unique vocabulary was incorporated or new words were invented, such as one of the letters that comes out pretty early is the letter Y, so they had to come up with new words for all of the days of the week. But as we get further and further in, the writing became more alliteration and was just hard to follow. So I gave Minnow 3 stars, but I still think it's worth reading if you like experimental fiction, because it is a very unique idea, and I thought the author did a fairly good job for most of the story. We made it. So overall, 11 books total, 2,772 pages, and 37.7 hours of listening. My breakdown was 73% fiction, 27% nonfiction, and my most read genre was historical fiction, with an average rating over the month of 3.78 stars. Honestly, this was a really strong start to the year, but don't get excited. February is not wrapping up to be like this prolific. But let me know what your best book of January was, and if you've read any of these that I've read, let me know what your opinions are. So next up is my January craft wrap-up. This project I started last year, and I was very excited to finish the final piece in January. It's a sextet of diamond paintings with a nature theme. Finally completed, framed, and hung, which was its own anxiety-provoking adventure to hang these mostly straight and level. And the other project is a labor of love that I actually don't think I've picked up since last January, so it's fitting. But I have high hopes for progress this year, and that is my Lighthouse cross stitch. So this is what it looks like now, and this is what it will hopefully look like one day. If you want to see more progress on this project, please tune into my reading, craft, and productivity sprints. And if you liked this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the February wrap-up. Bye.